How are you, Erik?
Oh, I'm good. It's we're still in the middle of our lockdown up here, so it's been a lot of days with not a lot going on, but I'm good, and I'm really excited about this. I think it's one of the things that's we were talking about the bringing all of the ancient stuff into modern culture, and we're kind of like the perfect example of it right here because we are literally on opposite sides of the planet. And here we are talking over video chat, and it's kind of amazing. It's kind of amazing that we're able to do this and have these sorts of conversations without being in the same place.
Yeah, like we saw on cartoons and stuff like that when we were younger, the video phone, and it was
Oh
like,
yeah, or like Dick
wow,
Tracy's watch.
that's amazing. It's never gonna happen, and here we are. Yeah, yeah.
I know, it's nuts. Yeah, it's I mean, I guess anyhow, that is nuts. But let's talk a little bit about tarot. So I've been doing tarot for a long time. Like I got my first tarot deck when I was just a kid, like maybe 14 or 15. So I've got a lot of experience with it. And it is, and I guess, like, I'm not sure. So where I live in the United States and kind of, I guess, in the English speaking world, when we get into tarot, it tends to be either Aleister Crowley's Thoth deck or the Rider-Waite deck. But I know that tarot is popular all over the place, but I'm wondering, is it kind of the same where you are?
Well, here, um, yeah, of course, the Rider-Waite, I think, is the most popular here. I'm not personally a tarot uh, expert or anything close to that. I'm just um, um, perhaps last year I started like unlocking the symbols and the system and the language, just the same
Mm-hmm.
as with astrology. The same thing happened for me. It's like at some point a kind of a door opened and I was able to, like, I don't know, I guess my mind was a bit too structured, and it relaxed a bit and
Yeah.
allowed me to interpret the symbols. And but yeah, Rider-Waite is very much the most used here, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen the Thoth deck in a bookstore, so I'm guessing that's used here as well. Oh, but
Yeah.
maybe the one that's perhaps as much as the Rider-Waite, or perhaps even more, is the Marseille deck. I think it's
You
very
think
very
it's
used in Spanish speaking places, I believe.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of suspecting that might be the case. I've seen excuse me. I've seen tarot decks or Marseille decks in Spanish,
Mhm.
quite a few of them for sale up here. So
Mm.
it always sort of seemed to me like maybe it would be more common. But again, like we were talking about before we started recording, a lot of the stuff, like thanks to the internet, gets spread all over the world.
Mm.
So there must be kind of a homogeneity, like a sameness, right? There must be sort of like this universality to some of these things, especially in countries like ours that are mostly of European descent.
Mm.
These are like symbols that are part of our culture that go back, you know, hundreds, sometimes thousands of years, and have been kind of like embedded into our common cultural psyche. Especially in the tarot, it's you're talking about like the symbols sort of like getting unlocked for you. One of the reasons I really like the Rider-Waite um, is that it has all of this symbolism that's already familiar to people. So even if they've never really spent time with tarot or really looked at it, there's still kind of they're still kind of aware of it, even if it's just sort of a subconscious level or an unconscious level. There are common symbols that are either scary or peaceful, or like from ancient myths or legends that already kind of give us things. Probably like the most obvious is like the death card or the judgment card, which shows sort of like like Gabriel blowing the trumpet and the people rising up out of their graves and stuff. So So I think that's kind of one of the things that makes tarot powerful. You know, it's one of the things that helps it speak to people. And I think it's probably also one of the things that makes people so scared of it sometimes. I think that we live in this modern world and we want to put this modern veneer on everything. And sometimes it's terrifying to realize that we've had this secret language kind of like baked into our culture and baked into the way we think and we do stuff.
Yeah, something from like so long ago, right? And
Oh
symbols
yeah.
that look like medieval in a way that
Yeah.
that they would still be prevalent or relevant in our time. It can
Mm-hmm.
scare, because it's like, yeah, it's got like biblical references or the devil card and magician, and it's like very esoteric. So people like some people might look at that and be, oh, what the hell is that?
Oh yeah. And then I think that there are cards where maybe the symbolism isn't really obvious, but they still can look at it and get kind of an uneasy feeling. You know, I mean, they'll look at it and they'll be like, I don't know why this card scares me, but
Mm.
it does. You know, I mean, sometimes it's obvious. You know, in the Rider Waite, you've got like these cards with people getting stabbed, and you know, like the Three of Swords with like the swords going through the heart. Like the meaning of that card is obvious the minute you draw it. Somebody's going to look at it and be like, "Oh no!" But then other times it's weird symbolism. Maybe stuff that people might have seen something similar before. Um, One of my favorite cards in the deck, in fact, is the Two of Cups. In the imagery in this card, it shows two people, each of them holding a cup, and they're about to toast. You know, so they're bringing their cups together, and out of the middle of their cups is sprouting this big caduceus, you know, like Hermes staff with the snakes twined around it and the wings on the top. And then the top of the caduceus is this big red lion head. And it just looks so incongruous. You know, you first have just this innocent picture of these people who look like they're just about to share a drink together. But then out of the middle of the picture comes this weird thing just sprouting out of everything. And people are going to look at that and they're going to, at first they're just going to see it as strange artwork, but something in their head is going to recognize some of those symbols. You know, they'll recognize kind of, you know, the wing, the snakes and the winged staff is like a symbol of medicine maybe, or they might recognize, you know, a weird colored lion, and they might have some recollection of that being, you know, tied to alchemy or something like that. But most people aren't going to know right off the bat what those symbols are about. They're just going to have kind of like a cultural echo, maybe like going around in their head that might inform them some, but might just confuse them more, or
Mhm.
maybe both.
Yeah, kind of like a genetic intuition or something
Yeah,
baked
yeah,
deep in their family tree.
yeah, yeah. And even it even could be like, you know, maybe I don't know about where you live. I've heard that Montevideo is a beautiful city, but where I live on the west coast of the United States, we don't have very much like fancy architecture. A lot of our buildings are just very plain and ugly. um, I mean, I live in a beautiful city, but it's not beautiful because of the architecture. Um, so we don't really get like the exposure to really old buildings. You know, we don't get the exposure to, you know, I mean, if you wander around, um, you know, any city in Europe, for instance, or probably, you know, the big old cities in South America, you get to see buildings that are old and constructed by like weird people who created weird sculptures and put weird symbols on them. So there's always these things sort of like being thrown at you in the background. You know, it's very similar symbols. But you also get it in a lot of modern television and movies. You know, televisions and movies, they love to portray this stuff as like spooky and weird and sometimes evil. Uh, and so you get these symbols sort of repeated over and over again all over the place. So people are constantly being exposed to them, right?
Yeah, I've seen even Like you see those Madonna pictures when she's dancing in a, I don't know, the Super Bowl or something like that, and she's dressed in something that represents perhaps a goddess from Sumeria or something like that.
Oh yeah, yeah. I feel like that happened at at the last Super Bowl.
Then it's probably happened many times.
Yeah, I'm sure it happens. I don't always pay a whole lot of attention to pop culture, so sometimes these things slip by me. But I do know that like ancient Egyptian motifs have been really popular in like pop music and stuff. Yeah, it shows up a lot. Yeah, so it's sort of interesting because I'm a voracious reader and I love that kind of weird history stuff. So I spend a lot of time, you know, poring over books and reading old grimoires and texts and looking at old alchemy pictures and things. So I guess I see a lot of it. And then because I've had so much experience with the tarot, those things meld together pretty well. And I get a lot of, I don't know, education that way. I don't know. I think my sentence sort of died there. It was going really well.
Actually, here close to my house, like a couple blocks away, there's this. Right now, they're building a building that used to be a kind of castle in a way.
Really?
I mean, I don't know if the word is castle, but it was one of the. I mean, yeah, they call it the Pitamiglio Castle. So it was one of the homes, I guess, of this. I guess I would say he was an alchemist called. I don't remember his first name, but he's Pitamiglio, his last name, and it's got like the gargoyles and all the stuff, and they're like keeping the outside, let's say, of that castle, which was like 3 stories high maybe, and creating a very tall building. And
wow.
I think they're calling it alchemia, so it's like they're keeping the concept and the energy from that.
Oh my God, I want to see that.
Yeah, I'll send you some pictures. And by the way, if you wanted to say something, I want to look for a thing that I would like to show you. That just reminded. I just remembered when I told you about the Marseille deck. The reason I think it's popular here as well is because there's this the French cards, the French playing cards.
Yeah.
Ace.
I've seen them.
Diamonds, hearts, all that.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
then there is also the Spanish playing cards. I don't know if you know about those.
I think I've heard of them. I think they're kind of descended from like Arabic playing cards.
Let me see if I can find. I think I have one right here. And
okay, great.
I want to show you. It's going to be interesting. So yeah, there's this alchemical atmosphere around my house.
Oh, that's amazing.
Around
that sounds so cool.
the city. I don't know. What do you think about that? Oh, look, I found them. I can't believe it. I found
them. That was so fast.
No, I can't believe how fast I found them. And in fact, they are closed. I haven't opened them. And they must be like 20 years old, this deck.
Yeah?
I've never opened it. We're going to unbox it right now.
Okay, I don't know that I've seen those. You know, I've seen like German playing card decks. They play this game called Skat, which has like a 36 card deck, I think. And then I've seen like French Lenormand decks, which are based on a similar style.
This cost me 25 pesos.
How much is how many hamburgers can you buy for 25 pesos?
Not one.
Okay.
A portion of one. I think the dollar right now, but when I bought this, it was like at 10 or 15. Now it's like around 40. So yeah, it's
okay. So that'd be like 50 cents. That'd be like half a dollar, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're unboxing. Okay. So here's just an example of the ace of coins.
So the name of the deck is naipes?
Yeah, naipes means cards. It's an old
Cards.
Spanish name for cards. Yeah.
Really? I thought
Yeah.
like carte meant card.
Carta, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Naipe
50
is another word
cartas.
for it. It's a more like old Spanish name for
Okay.
card.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Look, I've never unboxed something on camera, so I might not be doing the best job, but here we
It
go.
looks great. Looks great.
Look, and
Are
what I
they?
wanted to show you is how similar, here's no, this is a joker, but how similar it is to tarot.
Oh yeah.
And this is probably,
Yeah.
you know, how there's this idea of tarot having been um, encoded into playing cards, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the popular theory right now is sort of the most boring one, which is that tarot was originally a playing card game.
Mm.
And I don't know. I don't know if I buy it. I mean, oh yeah, that totally looks like a Marseille. Those are swords. You have actual swords on your cards. That
Yeah,
is so cool. Okay, and then more. Oh yeah, wow. The swords get fancier.
the
That
aces
is the
are
fancy.
pretty cool. Yeah,
Yeah, that's cool.
we got cups.
Okay, wow. So swords, cups. Nice, nice. Yeah, it looks so much like it looks. I think a Marseille reader could probably pick that deck up
Mhm.
and just use it. Probably.
We got clubs.
It actually has. Wow, cool. Those clubs are ginormous.
Yeah, they're awesome. And look, number 3 is pretty cool.
Yeah,
Got the 2.
they sort of look like carrots.
Yeah,
Oh wow.
uh,
Okay.
pretty fiery.
And then
And then we have
last
the coins or the golds.
coins. Wow. So it's almost the same suits even.
Yeah, right.
That's
Interesting.
yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah, I'm hoping when I release this that if people are just listening to it, I'm hoping to have the video on as well so that they can look at them. But we are looking at Spanish playing cards.
Yeah, they look really cool.
Number
And you can always just take pictures of the cards and put them in the show notes
show
too, so
notes.
people
Very good.
can
Yeah.
look at it.
So yeah,
But those are great.
I thought to show you this in case you didn't know about them. It's pretty cool, right?
Yeah, that is really cool. You know, it's funny because I'd heard about things like that, but it's hard to imagine them really existing without seeing them. You know, like the fact that they're so obviously so closely related to tarot. And in fact, you know, I've never encountered this in person or met anybody who's played it, but you also hear stories of like in parts of France and like Germany and Austria and stuff, they still have games called like Tarotchi or Tarok or something like that, where they still have a deck similar to a tarot deck that they play games with.
And you know, you just made me think. This is very popular kind of deck here.
Uh-huh.
In particular because we play a game here. It's more like kind of a silly game when you're younger, but some people take it
Mm-hmm.
very seriously, and it's called truco, so it's similar
Truco.
to, and
I bet you it's the same. It probably comes from the same word.
maybe, yeah. And
Yeah.
actually people what kind of the goal of the game is in a way to lie and deceive so that the other person doesn't know what cards you have, or so that you, it's kind of like poker, you know, like you try to make
Okay.
them think you have a certain thing. So the different plays that you can make are in a way created so that you can deceive. So maybe you like increase a bet when you play, right, in a certain way, so that the
Uh-huh.
other person thinks you have something, and they back down, and actually you had nothing, or stuff like that.
Oh, I gotta find the rules for that. That sounds really fascinating.
Yeah,
Um, and the like, but also the layout of that deck. I mean, it's basically like the 10 number cards and then 3 face cards. So you could play it with a normal American deck, which are far more boring looking than yours. But that's really cool. Thank you for showing me that. That's
yeah.
amazing.
Well, great.
Um,
I'm happy that you liked it.
Yeah. But so one of the reasons that I don't necessarily like the explanation of tarot originally being a card game Although I'm sure that there's probably something to it. I don't know that we're ever going to know the truth of it. Nor do I know that the truth of it really matters a whole lot. You know, where
Mm.
sometimes we get so obsessed with the history of a thing that we fail to pay attention to what it is now, right? But there's this amazing, amazing tarot-like deck that comes out of I want to say it's northern Italy, right around the same time that we have like the first tarot deck, and it's called a Montaigne deck, and it's 50 cards. It probably was never meant to be a game, and it's basically 5 sets of 10, and each set of 10 is like these super lofty, weird things. So you've got like the 9 muses and Apollo is one set. You've got the 7 planets, and then like the fixed stars, and then some other weird things is another set. And you've got like the 10 professions of man as another set, and it's beautiful. Like it's these weird, it's obviously, my feeling is that they were images that were sort of meant to be contemplated on, or used as like a means of understanding and learning, probably.
Mm.
um and I have a modern reproduction of the Montaigne Tarot, and I love using it and I love looking at it, but I've never really been able to use it for like fortune telling. It just doesn't feel right, I guess. Like I use it for myself as like a meditative thing where I'll draw cards and meditate on them. Or the deck came with this like solitaire game that the creator made up, where you sort of like lay out the cards, and the way that they move through the game is something that you contemplate and work with. um but the fact that that deck is so old, like as old as our early tarot cards, really makes me think that probably there was something spiritual or meaningful or extra, like there was an extra meaning that was applied to cards very early on.
Mm. Because
And
these cards
yeah,
come from a time before it could be like a printing press, right? It's
yeah, these
originally
cards
made by
were,
hand, right?
yeah, I think they were mostly like wood blocks.
Mm.
Like they would get like a really big sheet of wood, and they would do like a whole suit on one piece of wood, and they would just do them that way. um but it was, yeah, they were probably right around the same time as the printing press, so either like right around the same time or before. But they weren't made with like a Gutenberg press. They were like woodcuts. Yeah. God, must have been so much work to make a tarot deck or any card deck. So much work, and now machines do it.
Just a second.
mm, yeah, which is cool, right? I mean, it enables so many amazing artists and creators to create their own decks. You know, I know probably here in Portland, I know probably uh maybe almost 10 people who have made their own decks.
Mm.
Like
Uh,
it's,
are
yeah.
they good?
They're all good. They're all good in different ways. Like some of them are kind of pieces of art where you get them, but you probably would never read with them. Some of them are really amazing to read with. Some of them are basically like magical devices that they've created for some other purpose. You know, people are getting creative. They're doing amazing stuff with it. So it's kind of fun to see.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's so great to see especially younger people, you know, getting into all these esoteric things and and the rise and the revival that's been happening with magic, ceremonial magic, moon rituals, people getting back in touch with that part that has been suppressed for so long because of the perhaps because of the rational scientific extremely materialistic mind that we've been developing as a civilization.
Oh yeah, yeah, and that that's kind of my feeling too. I kind of feel like partially it's a reaction against that kind of materialistic mind, but I think also it's because our we got so hooked on the materialism, and we started, just basing everything on it, and we started to deny that there was anything else.
Mm.
And I'm not sure that the human spirit can take that. I don't think that we want to be cut off. I think that inside, I mean, maybe inside everybody, but how am I supposed to know that? But I think inside a lot of people, there's some spark or some bit of, I like to think that it's a piece of the divine that is just sort of like yearning to return and yearning to talk again, and I think that you can't focus so much on materialism for that long without having a um, a backlash. And I think it's a righteous backlash. I think it's something that should be happening. But also, I don't think that it's super new. I think that we're just sort of in the middle of the latest cycle of it. So if you go back in time, with your magic time machine, which I'm sure you guys have one of those down there. Yeah, right in there.
In your mind.
But if you go back, the every time that sort of like rationalist, materialist stuff started cropping up, you did always have a backlash. So, like so for instance, in like the English had the Romantic period where they had like William Blake and Percy Shelley and Keats and Byron and like all of these incredible poets who sort of like rejected that sort of like Enlightenment view and brought their mystical vision into the form of poetry and visual art and all this stuff, and they weren't going to just lie down and be rational all the time. They were going to have feelings and let people know that they're having feelings, and they were going to share their visions and share all of that stuff. And I think you see that kind of reaction happening over and over again. And I think you get it again at the end of the 1800s when you have like the French occultists and the English occultists and I mean, there must have been Spanish occultists. I don't know very much about the history of the Spanish occult, but I'm sure there were some. Um, but you had sort of like this occult revival that happened in like the 1880s, and then again you had it in like the 1960s and the 1970s, and then you're having it now.
Well,
Each time it's kind of
actually, if
yeah.
you think about
Sorry.
it, no, sorry to cut you off. It was just a small commentary that I believe most likely the discovery of America by the Spanish, or the quote
Hmm.
unquote discovery,
Yeah.
that was very much uh, it feels, and it's there was something very esoteric and magical behind it. Pretty sure.
Oh yeah. 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 There's a theory that um, the English wizard John Dee. Have you heard of him? Yeah, he supposedly was doing some sort of weird wizardry stuff to expand the British Empire, the English Empire, and stuff. But also, there's been a lot of research. So you were just mentioning the alchemist's castle that's next door to you or in your neighborhood, which is amazing. And there's a lot of stuff coming out now about early North American, European folk magic and alchemists coming over, and sort of like correspondence happening between alchemists in New England and England and all this kind of stuff. So I think that, first of all, it was again one of those things where you're looking at, the Protestant Reformation and then the Counter Reformation from the Catholic Church, both of which were like super boring, right? Like they were basically like, oh, everybody's just here to work and love Jesus. Like that's all you get to do. There's no weird stuff. You wear really boring clothes, you go to church, and that's it.
Mm.
But there, of course, was a backlash against that, which was the Renaissance people with their pagan artwork and alchemical manuscripts and weird ass music and bizarre you know hedge witches and doctors and stuff that were doing all of this crazy stuff kind of under the church's nose all the time. And I think that a lot of them saw the new world as kind of a place to escape.
Yeah.
So we probably did get a bunch of them out here.
Yeah, you would totally run away from the kind of status quo that had risen up in Europe. And I mean, there was very likely a lot of an occult scene over there as well. But some of,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, imagine yourself, no, having the kind of magical mindset you have, and people like ourselves, and
Yeah.
and living in Europe, and suddenly they tell you, oh, do you know there's a new world?
I would be thrilled.
I'm in the boat. I'm in the boat 1 second after they tell me the news. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be on I'd love to be on the spaceship to Mars.
But you see, I don't know if I would go to Mars. I don't know. If it's still on the Earth, I'd be the first one on the ship. But if it's outside the Earth, I don't know. It's kind of spooky.
Yeah, but I mean, imagine how spooky it would have been back then.
Yeah. Mm.
You'd be spending 3-4 months on a creaky ship eating like rotten biscuits and drinking old water, or like the worst rum in the world.
Yeah, you're lucky. Yeah. What an adventure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so with time, people came here.
Mm-hmm.
Magical minded people came here. I think you use the word occult. So people interested in the occult, and so all those things like tarot and astrology were imported over here, and actually they must have met with uh, with local counterparts, perhaps, of those things, right? So like the natives might have had, of course, they had their own spirituality, so they,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, in the United States, we were brutal to the natives. When the Europeans came over, they killed almost all of them.
Mm.
So it was pretty bad. It's hard to say. I think that we do. This is something that I haven't studied a whole lot on, but I do think we have some early, like American, kind of like folk magic and folk spirituality, which incorporates Native American stuff. But I don't know. I really don't know a whole lot about how they interacted and what kind of stuff was exchanged between them.
What I was thinking, for example, the Mayan astrology, they have a very intricate and complex
Oh yeah.
system. So
Mm-hmm.
if the Mayans had something like that, most likely many other tribes probably did.
Oh, I'm sure they did. Yeah. Well, I mean, we know that there were some pretty big cultures and civilizations up in North America that were just kind of wiped out. But we don't have they don't seem to have left any written records, so we don't have a whole lot of information about that. But the Mayan stuff is really fascinating because the Mayans kind of wiped themselves out before Europe even got here. So all of the stuff we have from them, all of their astrology and their calendar stuff is all like archaeological pretty much. So that stuff is really fascinating. But it does sort of point to the fact that this kind of yearning or search for meaning or desire to kind of like project, oh, project isn't the right word. This desire to find spiritual meaning in the world is part of human nature. right? Like it's
Really.
something that, yeah, it's important to who we are and what we are. And I think it kind of is, I wish that our society was better at acknowledging how important it was.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's a powerful human yearning. This idea
Hmm.
of reading the world in a way. The symbolism of the events that happen in your life, of the meaning of the things that happen, the synchronicities, and from a meaningful coincidence to something that appears random. I mean, you can always, in a way, you use the word to project meaning into it, but also you can like extract meaning from it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and it's hard to know, how much of that meaning is something that you are projecting, and how much are you extracting. That's, I think, and maybe that's not even super important. Maybe the fact that maybe the experience of meaning is the most important part. I mean, if you go out, I mean, you go to the ocean and you sit there and you immerse yourself in just the experience of being next to the ocean. This huge, enormous body of water, the smells and the sounds and the feelings, and like the change in temperature and wildlife, and the earth under your feet. It's an otherness. You get a feeling of otherness right away. And it's easy to kind of like lose part of your consciousness, or part of your like conscious awareness in this kind of experience of beauty. You get a chance to kind of look at the beauty around you and sort of feel it, and live in it. But it gives you definitely that feeling that, like, this is a feeling of pleasure that comes just from like mere existence. And the meaning to that kind of has like a number of it has levels. The first and most obvious one, to me at least, is always that, you know I'm not a machine. As much as the world, as much as like society wants to tell me that, my job here is to be like I have no worth unless I'm working. I can go have an experience like that and realize that my worth is almost universal, right? Like, we all have it in us to have the kind of like the beauty of experience. It's that whole idea of like, as part of creation, our job here is to be creation looking back upon itself and experiencing itself and realizing how beautiful it is. We spend so much time telling ourselves to love ourselves, that we forget that our job really is to kind of like love everything in a really authentic, kind of like nice, peaceful way, until we get eaten by a lion or a shark. Then but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, that was
Yeah.
very beautifully put. Um,
Thanks.
and you said it yourself. We all have it in us to enjoy the beauty of the world,
Yeah.
and we tend to forget, or I don't know, our senses kind of trick us, and our mind, the mind always speaking and giving its opinion about everything. It kind of tricks us to think that the beauty is out there in the thing, right? So the flower is
Yeah.
beautiful because the flower is beautiful, but in just in the way we speak, we tend to show how subconsciously we know it's differently, because you said it, we have it in us. I mean, you give a flower
Yeah.
to anyone, and they will see that beauty, not because the flower. I remember there's mm, this speaker that talked about the flower precisely, and how for example, he talked about the relationship of the flower and the bee, and it was the flower isn't beautiful because it wants to the bee to say, oh, how beautiful you are. The flower has the colors and the shapes and all that, because that's its the reproductive organs of the plant, which want to attract the bee so that it can pollinate and reproduce.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the flower, it's not a beauty that is in the flower. The flower is just a flower, but the beauty is in you. I'm not very good at showing the thing
Yeah.
with such clarity as this guy, but there was the way in which I heard it, which made it so clear how the beauty is inside me, and I'm projecting it or extracting it, or who knows, from that.
Yeah. I would say maybe it's almost like the beauty is the shared experience, right? Like the beauty isn't going to exist unless you're there observing it,
Mm.
right? It's your passive interaction with what you're observing that allows the beauty to kind of manifest as a thing. And I would say that like in a sense like this, the beauty isn't, it's not really an attribute that you're looking at. It's not sort of like you're looking at the flower and being like, oh, that flower is beautiful. What's happening is that experience is sort of partaking of the idea of beauty, right? So the idea of beauty is like, and this is getting weird and Neoplatonic, but it's sort of like this. There's a cosmic perfection of beauty somewhere, and what we're seeing is, or what we're experiencing is, a facet of that kind of like shining through into our world and our experience.
And I think we're also getting kind of Buddhist in that the beauty, we, we are seeing ourselves in the flower. The
Yeah.
flower is allowing us to see a part of ourselves which we normally overlook.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, it's funny. So like if you look at this from like a materialist point of view, we can look at the flower, you know, let's say you see, I don't know, a yellow tulip or something, and you can look at the flower and you can be like, oh my God, that's an incredible shade of yellow. Like, look at how it's set off against the background. Look how it's set off against the green of its leaves. You know, look at this, you know, experience a smell. Like you have all these experiences of it. But then you know, you read about how flowers are so intent on, you know, they are so well crafted for attracting bees that if you could see more colors, it would be even better.
Mm.
But that's not really,
The biggest.
yeah. But I don't think that's what it's about. You know, it's not about seeing as many colors as possible. It's just about experiencing that moment of beauty. It's about having that kind of reflection. It's like we're trying to increase the self-esteem of creation by acknowledging that there is beauty in both the observer and the observed. I just made that up. I hope it makes sense.
Oh, that was great. So good
Good.
recording this. You gotta write that down later. That,
I will. I'll totally write it down.
uh,
Yeah. And
I don't know. Maybe we could tie this with 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 how it's not just that we're doing that with natural. And I've always got this issue with the idea of natural and artificial. I mean,
oh yeah, me too.
we look
Yeah.
at the beauty in a, let's call it for now, in a natural object or thing, like a flower or the ocean or our loved one, and
Mm-hmm.
and then we look um, at at something made by humans, and I don't know, we get this kind of, sometimes we get this kind of, not repulsion really, but we're like, oh, that's so artificial,
Unnatural. Yeah, we call it unnatural.
natural, so
Yeah, that is, I think that's a poison. I think that's also part of, I think that's all that also comes out of like that materialist mindset where we we set ourselves, we're like, oh, humans, we are so smart, we are above and beyond nature, and so what we do is unnatural, but everything that nature does is natural. I think there's a level of like hubris in there. I think that there's kind of an echo of there's this idea in Christianity that like the world was created to serve man, and that man is not of the world. And I think that that's a poisonous idea for our minds. I don't think it's a good one. But I agree, like nature, we are part of nature. You know, we exist in it. We do a lot to try to structure it and control it and bend it to our will. But yeah, I'm not really very comfortable with that division between natural and unnatural either. Except maybe for plastic.
The plastic is dinosaurs many years later, right?
I know they never die. Like how did they're very lucky. Also, you know, birds are dinosaurs.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah. So birds and plastic. Birds and plastic are unnatural, but everything else is natural.
Yeah. we get this thing of kind of it, in a way it feels like a self-esteem of humans to reject or to get weird about the human creations and putting them in another category as if they are not natural. Because I mean, I understand why, uh, in a way, because of the perhaps the shapes of the things that we do as humans. They tend to be um, actually, you know, I was going to say they tend to be something non-organic, because if they're like squares, rectangles, stuff like that. But if you think about it, if you go to the you were mentioning Neoplatonism and the realm of ideas, it's like in a certain way our the human creations seem to be closer to, I don't know if closer is the right word, but you know how we make
Yeah. We try to it's
connect-
almost like we try to emulate them.
Mm,
Yeah. Um yeah, I was thinking about it like I think part of it is I think part of it also might come from kind of that you know, the romantic rejection of materialism that we were talking about earlier. I think everybody kind of wants to reject materialism, but out of materialism, we've gotten so much better at manipulating nature, right? We've gotten so much better at manipulating our surroundings. We've gotten, you know, chemistry and physics and medicine and like um, all of these things that like nobody, your average person isn't going to understand. You know, like I can't make plastic myself, for instance. Um, but I think a big part of it is we see this stuff happening and we're like, oh, that's not natural. Look at what man has done now. And I think that part of that is we want to we're uncomfortable with what the sort of like materialist mindset has done to us, but we also are unaware of where that discomfort comes from. That that's my working hypothesis. I think that I don't know. It's hard. It's a tough one. It's a really tough question. Like I do agree with you that that sort of line that we draw between natural and unnatural, it doesn't feel right or very honest to me, and it feels like it kind of lacks um, it kind of lacks a deep contemplation. Like you kind of want to look at this stuff and be like, no, we're learning more about how everything in the universe works. We're learning what, you know, how, you know, particle physics works and subatomic particles. And we're learning chemistry and we're learning how everything interacts and works together. And we're doing it sort of consciously and purposely. And we're not, you know, evolving ways to like make mud walls with our butts like termites or something. We're instead like doing this on purpose, you know. So it's there's an element of conscious effort to it, which maybe scares people. There's also an element of like building on generations of knowledge, which I think is also kind of intimidating to people. And And then there's also this element of like, I think humans, I mean, I think this might be very, very cultural and very specific, but like we enjoy independence. Uh, we enjoy being sort of like our own person, able to take care of all of our own needs, able to do all this stuff. And this sort of material development, this, quote unquote unnatural stuff is a reminder that we are unable to survive and do stuff on our own. We need the people around us to specialize in these various things. uh I don't feel I feel like a lot of these ideas are a little half baked, but they definitely have been floating around in my head, and I definitely think that they are something to think about and contemplate.
Yeah, they're great to explore. It's like
Yeah.
the way we are holding certain opposites. You were talking a little bit about how materialism or or part of what you were mentioning is kind of something that's kind of uncomfortable, but on the other hand, we've created all of this to create comfort, and it has given us comfort,
Hmm.
and it also feels like it's kind of childish in a way. You were mentioning the idea of how we like to be independent, and all that you were saying, and I got the picture of like a child wanting to get independent from its mother, right? But it's still
Right.
a child, so the wisdom isn't very much developed, and he does like I don't know, something very basic that a child might do, and believes, oh, because I did this, now I'm so mature, I'm such a big boy now. But
Yeah, yeah.
at the
But
same
it's almost like
time, killing his mother with what he's doing.
right. Yeah, but our mother that we're rebelling from here is like Mother Nature almost. Or it's our fellow people. It's the people around us who are figuring stuff out and giving us things that we're relying on them for. Yeah, I don't know. It's a conundrum. It's hard being human. It's which I guess is probably part of the point. But
Mm.
the more you think about it, the more you pay attention to it, the tougher it is.
Yes,
Yay.
with our minds, like I was saying before, our minds always trying to have the answer, and always thinking that it can have the answer, and or that the
Mhm.
answer is within its grasp, and
Eh,
so many things are outside the mind, and that's something that materialist philosophy has, and the way we live today, we've forgotten that there is a realm outside of mind, that that perhaps things like tarot help us tap into, and especially the, the inner work, the spiritual work, self-awareness, all those types of practices that are on the rise now, like meditation and yoga we were mentioning also. All those things are helping us, I think. I mean, it it sounds cliche, but I mean, it's helping us polish and open our hearts, which is a good metaphor for that realm which is outside of the mind.
yeah. Yeah. I think that I think that's a really good way to look at it. I think I kind of hope that everybody who listens to this episode takes some time to go sit with some trees or a body of water or a house plant, or stare at a wall, maybe enjoy the beauty of a man-made object instead of something that grew out in the dirt. But because it's everywhere, right? Like that sort of beauty feeling is not that kind of stuff that's outside the mind. It's not limited to, actually, I guess it's not even limited. It's everywhere.
Yeah, existence itself. I mean, the in Vedantic philosophy, one of the descriptions of God, Sat Chit Ananda, truth or existence, consciousness, bliss. So it's like
Yeah.
bliss, and that beauty is inherent in the universe, in existence.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, and we're so
That's
lucky
good.
to
We
be
are.
able to interface with it, and all the resistances and mind games that we play with ourselves to feel like we are independent from that mother. It's a fun journey. I mean, it can get heavy sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
As much as we listen to our minds, that much is how heavy the play is gonna get, I think.
Yeah. This reminds me of I was telling you before we started recording that I lived in Costa Rica for a little while and was learning Spanish from a friend down there. And one of the things that he used to have me do uh, is he would bring me Spanish songs to translate. He'd be like, and they were easy songs, but one of the things that just really struck me all the time was the amount of like feeling and emotion and like really colorful metaphor that got put into this music. And it was like popular music, and I was just sort of reading it. I just remember sort of translating it and being like, they can just say this stuff, like this is okay. Because it seems so strange to me. You never hear like that level of meaning and like heartfelt, really poetic stuff being like poured into English music, English language music, and then becoming popular. It seems it was kind of beautiful to me, but it did remind me that we end up having our experiences are so shaped by the society and culture that we live in. And at least, where, the culture that I've grown up in, it is really very, it's trying to cut off. And I mean, I don't think it's done in a hostile way. I think it's just the way that it's developed, but it's developed into a way where it tries to cut all of us off from, the beauty of the world around us. Tries to tell us that our worth is not really tied to that. And I think it is kind of a poisonous thing. And I do think that's why stuff like, tarot and spirituality and stuff, I think that's why they're coming back. It's a rebellion against that sort of thing that's trying to destroy our worth as humans.
Mm, that was so beautifully put. You almost made me cry. It's
Oh,
a yearning of the soul, right?
it
Like
is a yearning of the soul.
it
Yeah.
lets us go, what's the word, like wayward, right? And
Yeah.
and every now and then it like uh, taps our shoulder and brings us back and shows us how it can contain us and give us calm and peace and
Right.
return
Yeah.
to-
Yeah. Nature's hug.
yeah, nature's hug and what was it before the nature's self-worth? What was it? You say
Oh
that was
yeah. The universe's self-esteem.
human. This
uh,
conversation is so great. I mean, I could go on for a little while longer if you got time. We've barely scratched the surface of tarot. I think we only mentioned the word tarot 5 or 6 times, but didn't go
oh
into it.
well, maybe we should just keep your audience wanting more later. I would be
Yeah.
happy to come back and talk about this stuff some more.
It will be a pleasure for me as well. This has been such a great opportunity to meet you and connect. I've listened to your show a few times.
Oh,
Um,
thanks.
yeah, and
Yeah.
that's how I don't know. I think we all do, but I particularly have this, or I'm in touch with this intuition and like I listened to your show, and since the first time I think I heard to an episode you were talking, I think about Dune or something like
Oh
that.
yeah. Right.
I don't know if it was about the book or about, and you mentioned many different volumes and types of the book. I only know the one, but I was like hooked immediately, and you have such a relaxed energy, such a fun energy, and yeah, I connect very much to that, and yes, as I
Ah,
listen to that, I thought, well, when I have my podcast, I want to get this guy on because he's fun listen to. And yeah, you're such a great guy.
Well, thank you, Rafa. You're a great guy too. This has been a delight. You know, I hope that your listeners go check out your music and some of the other stuff you're doing. Yeah, this has been really fun. Plus, I really think so. I mean, just the fact that we live, 4,000 miles away from each other and are able to do this and sort of like share our thoughts and create this for people to listen to is beautiful and amazing. So thank you for reaching out to me. This was amazing. I really hope we do this again.
Yeah, me too. And people with similar mindsets to ours, or similar ways to look at the world, they might feel very, very alone sometimes. I know I felt that way during a period, and actually podcasts was one of the things that rescued me and that helped me stay sane. And knowing that there were people, who thought like me. In fact, I mentioned Terence McKenna before. I didn't When I heard McKenna for the first time on one of the on a podcast, when I heard him for the first time explaining his ideas, it was like immediately there's like, wow, this person is saying my thoughts in or saying my feelings in ways that I didn't know how to express in words. It's like I had these feelings inside me, which I wasn't aware in a way, and I was like clashing against the world because I didn't know how to express these things inside me. And there suddenly a guy appears who was already dead, speaking to me and telling me his ideas, and they were so much in congruence and similar to how I was feeling. And having access to stuff like that, and having those things help you, it's invaluable, I think.
Oh, I agree. And so making these sorts of podcasts where you get a chance to kind of like reach out and share this stuff with people, I think is really valuable, because podcasts are free and easy to get to, and it gives it does remind people that they're not alone. We're all out there, we're all feeling that kind of weird thing, that there's something more that we should be doing or can do, or there's something more that we can experience. And it's just really important to remember that you're not alone in having that feeling. None of us are.
Okay, Erik, so just for closing, please go ahead and share with everybody listening your where they can find you.
All right. Yeah, I do the Arnemancy Podcast, Arnemancy. I'm Arnemancy on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and all that kind of stuff. And I also write. I have a Arnemancy blog, and I write about all of this super weird stuff. Any weird stuff, just please look me up there, arnemancy.com. Yeah, thank you again, Rafa. This is great.
Yeah, thank you. Well, it's going to be hard to say goodbye, but we can do a virtual high five, okay? So we don't...
High five!
Go!
Oh, yeah.
Have a good day.
Yeah, you too.